silver birch here on this beautiful green. They're wonderful trees, full of folklore and legends, like all the other trees that we've been doing. They're known as the tree of new beginnings, of purification. They've got so much history, so let's take a look, shall we?
The Celts considered the silver birch tree as very sacred. It was the first tree of the Ogham, which is the Celtic tree alphabet. It was celebrated during the festival of Samhain, which we know as Halloween. Birch twigs were used to drive out the evil spirits of the old year and to celebrate the new year.
The silver birch tree, beautiful trees that glisten in this sun.
The mysterious, beautiful silver birch. It's known as the ladder between heaven and earth, and one of its names is translated to shine bright white. The silver birch is one of the first trees to come into leaf in the spring and is known as a symbol of spring and new beginnings. They can grow up to 20 metres and are a very fast growing tree. They live between 30 and 90 years. Some individuals have been known to live to 150 years. The silver birch has both male and female flowers. The male catkins are formed in the autumn and will remain on the tree all winter. They are 4 to 5 centimetres and a yellow-brown colour. They have 2 to 4 tips of shoots which look like lamb's tails. The females are smaller with short bright green and they are erect, and the female catkins appear in the spring with the new shoots. We all know the silver birch, but there's also the downy birch and the dwarf birch. The dwarf birch is mainly found in the highlands. Now, to tell the difference between the downy birch and the silver birch, the downy birch is more upright and the bark is a browner colour. The leaves are more rounded. The leaf stalks are downy as opposed to the hairless ones on the silver birch.
The silver birch is used for so many things. It's made for bobbins and reels. The bark is used as well. It makes a beautiful wine if you've ever tried it. I have, and it's lovely. And it also can be made into bread.
Bread made from birch has been very popular in Scandinavia and Finland for a long time. It's now available here, and it's supposed to have a slightly bitter taste and similar to the texture of sourdough bread. We also can get birch tea, which is full of vitamin C, and a lot of people drink it. Birch is also used for ointments, for rheumatism and tinctures. So as you see, the birch tree has so many uses.
Silver birch is very protective. All through the ages, the Saxons, the Romans, they all considered it very protective. Cradles for newborns were made out of birch to protect them from evil spirits.
Birch is associated with protection and magical powers throughout the ages. Bundles of birch twigs would be tied together and put in the house around Halloween to drive out the evil spirits of the old year and to bring in good luck. In the Highlands, the farmers would use birch sticks to herd in the cattle. If the cows were pregnant, this would ensure they would have an easy birth and a healthy calf. And if a cow was barren, this would be good because she would become fertile again.
Silver birch twigs and sticks. You've heard of beating of the bounds. Birch was the favourite stick. It's still done today. Even today, beating of the bounds is done at many parishes all over the country and even at the Tower of London.
The Tower of London holds its own beating of the bounds ceremony. It occurs every third year The yeoman warders, known as the beefeaters, and some local school children and scout groups carry out the beating of the bound ceremony, where they progress around the edges of the Tower of London's liberties, the boundaries that mark the land outside the tower but under its control. They walk around and whip the iron markers that mark the ancient border. The priest from All Hallows and the heads of the tower are also present at this ceremony. In the pre-Reformation Britain, this was a ceremonial affair which would have been attended by lords of the manor, bailiffs, and other local dignitaries. The beating party was often made up from boys of the parish. Indeed, St Martin's in the Fields has records dating back to the 16th century, describing how boys of the parish accompanied the clergy. These boys were paid to carry planks which they would lay down over muddy ditches and open sewers so that the clergy did not get their robes dirty. When the boundary stones were reached, the boys were whipped to make sure they would remember and were paid 2p each for their pains. Luckily today, it's a much nicer affair, but it actually dates back to Roman times. This ceremony, back in Roman times, was called Terminalia, which took place on February the 22nd. It was to honour their god Terminus, the Roman god of boundaries and landmarks. Back then, there were animal sacrifices and blood which would be smeared on people and on the stones that marked their boundaries. Roman boundary markers can still be seen today. They have been unearthed by archaeologists on digs, and even workmen, while carrying out works at different places, have found these beautiful stones that we can see today. Birch trees have been in this country since the last ice age. Bunches of birch and boughs were put in the house on the doors on Midsummer's Eve to ward off evil spirits and for good luck, the same as they did at Halloween. Medieval magistrates on their way to court would have birch, and this would show their authority and means of correction. Birching has been used in this country for centuries. The Druid is called the silver birch, the goddess tree, or Lady of the Woods. It's also Finland's national tree. The birch has always been associated with the spirits of the dead, and with those that mourn for sympathy with the sorrowing weeps, the birch of the silver bark with long dishevelled hair. The silver birch has long been associated with deities and gods. Freya and Frigg, love and fertility goddesses, and also Easter, from whom we derive the word Easter, was an Anglo-Saxon goddess of spring. She was celebrated around and through the birch tree between the spring equinox and Beltane. It is also associated with the warrior god Lugh in Irish mythology. The saying is, full of light, the warrior god Lugh. Birch Polypore, a bracket fungus that only grows on birch tree. It's rounded, smooth and leathery, either white or pale brown. Witcherbroom, caused by the fungus Taphorina betulina, are the clusters that you see that look like birds' nests, messy, untidy birds' nests. Fortunately, it feeds off the young shoots and does not do much harm to the tree.
Look at these lovely trees in this wonderful forest. Back here you can see lovely silver birch. The Roman vindolanda was made from birch.
Roman tablets, known as the Vindolanda tablets, are the oldest handwritten documents in Britain. In Irish mythology, the Irish warrior Dermot and his lover Gronje were fleeing from Fen Mac Hall, who was promised the hand of Gronje in marriage, slept on a bed of birch twigs.
Here we see fallen silver birch, but still it has lots of uses. Creatures will live inside and make good use of it. The lesser spotted woodpecker loves the silver birch. It's its favourite tree.
May Day, Beltane. The meaning of the Maypole. Originally, the Maypole would have been a living tree, and it would have been decorated with ribbons and garlands and looked really spectacular. It goes back through history, back to Roman times, and lots of countries all over the world celebrate May Day. Maypoles symbolise fertility and are made from birch trees. In Roman Britain around 2,000 years ago, soldiers celebrated the arrival of spring by dancing around decorated trees, thanking their goddess Flora. These days, dancers weave around ribbons around a pole rather than the tree. The British May Day tradition of dancing around a maypole is around 600 years old, and the activity often brings communities together. It is a lovely, fun day. Many artists have painted the lovely silver birch. Many poets have written about the silver birch. In Samuel Taylor Coleridge's poem, "Beneath your birch with silver bark and boughs so pendulous and fair, the brook falls scattered down the rock, and all is mossy there." Throughout the ages, this beautiful tree has been loved. Let's hope it continues to be loved for the future.
The beautiful birch tree, the silver birch. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's been fascinating looking at all the things to do with this wonderful old tree.